Join us on our journey to discover the Buddhist way of life.
Last week, we began our series on Dr. Robert Thurman, professor of Indo-Tibetan Buddhist Studies at Columbia University. In our first episode, we asked Dr. Thurman about the characteristics of Tibetan Buddhism.
So when people ask, what is Tibetan Buddhism? You have to say what Tibetan Buddhism is it's like a treasure box of all of the varieties of Buddhism. They have Zen Buddhism, they have Pure Land Buddhism, they have Mikyo Buddhism, they have monk Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism. So they have all of the varieties kind of collected in a box. And then they use them all in a certain type of integration. What is most, I would say, kind of fantastic or sort of superficially attractive about Tibetan Buddhism, perhaps, is the esoteric part, because it's so highly developed. In the Chinese Tripitaka, they have only 1% of the Mikyo texts that there are, they have maybe 50, maybe 100 or 50 texts. And they have thousands of texts that from India, though, not just made in Tibet, but from India.
In this second episode of our three-part series with Dr. Robert Thurman, we asked him how he first became involved with Buddhism.
Western philosophy, I became a little dissatisfied. I thought that they were too much devoted to materialistic science, and they had given up the great philosophical quest of enlightenment, of understanding the world fully. And I thought I didn't like that. And then psychology, I thought, was also very similarly materialistic, thinking of mind as just like some kind of machine, like a robot brain, So I was looking for something, and I had some kind of a feeling from my reading that India was there were some wise people still in India. I didn't really know, but I thought so. So I took a leave of absence from college, and I went to India, and I met there some different Hindu teachers and Sufi teachers, Muslim teachers. And then I also met some Christian mystics on the way, actually, in Greece and so forth. And I liked all of them, holy men type of thing. But when I met the Tibetan people, something clicked, and I immediately began to learn their language, and I really liked their philosophy, actually. I was not interested really in being religious or believing in something. I was interested in exploring, investigating the world, and investigating the mind. And the Tibetan translations of the ancient Nagarjuna, Asanga, and the great ancient Indian philosophers, Buddha himself, just blew my mind. I just loved it. I thought it was just tremendous. And so then I was so interested, all I wanted to do was study. And so in Tibetan tradition, when you only want to study, you don't want to do any other work, you become a monk, and then people feed you, and you can just study. It's very simple. You don't have to apply for a scholarship. You just shave your head, put on your robe, take a vow, and then you get free lunch. And you can study the whole time, So I did that, and I was very happy studying. But then after a while, I sort of reached a certain point where I realized that I was not a Tibetan, and Tibet was destroyed, actually, and I was an American, and so I had to somehow integrate this new study and this new fascination of mine with America and have a living and be able to support myself and so on. I couldn't depend on a free lunch forever. And so I decided I would be a professor, which you get another kind of free lunch, Unfortunately, you have to work for your lunch, But some people might think professor has a free lunch, but they don't realize we have to work very hard. So that's the next best thing to a monastery, is being a professor, So then I did that, and I must say, I thought during my time as a monk that I really understood a lot about Buddhism, and I really was very gung-ho, and I was very dedicated and very determined about it. When I became a monk, I intended to be a monk forever. But after a while, I kind of a little bit more relaxed. But then also, as the great privilege of being a teacher is that you study something over and over again every year to teach the students about it, what you learned, So then when you do that, you learn it better, and you learn a little more each time. you're not only the students, but you learn more, because sometimes the students teach you even because they're young and sharp, so you learn something new in explaining to them, And so that's a great privilege, and I have to say I really love Buddhism. All aspects about it. Everything, it's art, it's literature, it's philosophy, it's ethics. I think Buddhism is one of the great gifts of the world from Asia, originally from India, and then going to East Asia, Southeast Asia, and a little bit, very much in Iran in ancient time actually, even. It had probably some influence on Christianity in the very early period, which people can't really trace. But the Emperor Ashoka, he sent missionaries to Egypt and Greece in the 3rd century before the Common Era. After the time of Alexander the Great, not about a century or 300 or 400 years. He was 2 generations after Alexander the Great, Ashoka was. And he sent missionaries to the West. And so there are Buddhist precepts found in Egyptian, Aramaic language, Greek language. There are some fragments archaeologists have found. So I think it's a wonderful thing, but not just as a religious thing. I'm not interested in a lot of people being Buddhist, because also I know a lot of Buddhists who are very egotistical. I myself am far from perfect, and I can be quite egotistical. I can lose my temper. I can be a nasty Buddhist. So we don't need a lot of nasty Buddhists. We need people to study and learn more about the world and Buddhism. And so from the point of view of Buddhism being a great method of teaching how to use your mind better, how to understand yourself better and the world better, and then how to be nicer to other people once you understand yourself and you understand other people better. This is the great gift of Buddhism. Really, to me, it's, the 3 what are called trainings in Buddhism. I forget the Japanese word. The Sanskrit word is adhishiksha. There's a definition of Buddhism that it consists of 3 types of teachings, adhishikshas. And the word is often translated as a training. Like training a soldier or training a horse, which I don't like. Really, the word adhishiksha means education. So the 3 types of education, which are ethical, which are psychological or meditational, learning how to control your mind, and are intellectual, wisdom means intellectual or scientific. And so we, human beings, even modern, are not educated well enough. Even we have computers and we have automobiles, we are not well educated how to manage our emotions. And we are unhappy, and we get depressed, and we get angry, and we get greedy. And we're not, like my university doesn't teach people how to be mature about their emotions. And they only, somebody goes crazy, then they send them to a psychiatrist. But otherwise, people think that you can't train them. Maybe the parents have to train them and teach them that, and then after it, this, however they are, that's how they are. But actually, everyone should be educated that way. And their Buddhism can be a huge help, but without making it religious, like a therapy, or like an adult education, or like a developmental, psychological development. And that's the great gift, I think. That is where Buddhism has a real impact in future. And Tibetan Buddhism, I think, is only important in that it may be expanding the different pharmacopoeia. It has like a bigger box of medicines, methods maybe than the other ones, and can supplement what other ones do, And I don't believe that Tibetan Buddhism is going to spread as a huge religion, and I don't think it should try, I don't think that it should really even try, I think that it should help people without religious enforcement of any kind. And same as all the other Buddhisms, But of course, I think then we should help Tibet be restored and get it free from the communists, whether part of China or not part of China, doesn't matter. But as long as they're internally free and not being colonized, I think that's very important. Then Tibetan Buddhism can really flourish in Tibet. People can go there to study. They can visit here and teach. It'll be much nicer. Maybe one reason they make such an effort here now is because they don't have their own country. So they're sort of exiled, wandering everywhere, you see. And so they're making a home for themselves in California or in New York or somewhere because they don't have a home. They lost their original home, And we should restore their original home for them, That's what Tibet House, we're working on that. We want to, this is the home for their culture, and we want them to enjoy their own home as well and have many universities there. We can go study in those universities. That would be wonderful. And actually, if Chinese government would have intelligent policy instead of foolish like colonial policy, imperialist policy, which is outmoded now, obsolete. The Chinese government and Dick Cheney think they can have empires, but they are mistaken. They're not going to work. And so, if they would have a sensible policy and they would treat Tibet as a treasure house and a jewelry, they call it Xizang, Nishino something, treasury of the West, Xizang means the treasury of the West, I don't know the Japanese word. But if they treated it like that and made it available to the world as a free Buddhist country, whether province of China or not, doesn't matter, but internally free, and people would go from all over, and it would be a great ornament to China, and the Chinese would be seen as patrons, as the old emperors were, of this wonderful culture, both Mongolia and Tibet, And the world would find this very valuable, and many of our American Buddhists would go visit there, and Japanese Buddhists. It would become a wonderful spiritual resort that would be marvelous in the world, the way it used to be. And instead of just a bunch of Chinese troops and miners and poor Chinese colonists who are trying to live in 3-mile altitude, and they don't have enough oxygen, and they get lung diseases, they get sick, they can't live there. It's like too high, So I'm confident that within a few years, Chinese government will finally be more pragmatic, and they will stop this attempt to be imperial. Just like I am hopeful that America will be more pragmatic and give up this foolish attempt to have a new empire, which is making everyone else in the world angry with us, with America, which is very, very bad. Instead of liking America, now everyone angry with America because of this stupid imperialist policy, which will not work anyway. It's impossible. The world is too big. No one can conquer anymore, Everyone is too clever, and the weapons are too powerful, and the knowledge is too great. So no one can control everyone anymore. Luckily. That's a lucky thing.
Next week, in our final episode with Dr. Thurman, we will ask him about the relationship between Tibetan Buddhism and the United States. Please join us.
This program was brought to you by Bukkyo Dendo Kyokai, Society for the Promotion of Buddhism.